Spiritual Uplift with Billy Lambert from the Summerdale Church of Christ.
Today we're going to talk about where is God when I hurt? Where is He when I hurt? And to give you the little bit of the background behind the passages that we're going to be looking at, the children of Israel, the Hebrews, the Jews, had been in slavery in Egypt for a number of years. They were not always slaves. They came from Canaan to Egypt in quest of food, and finally they were living in the land of Goshen. But over a period of time, they were made slaves. And they cried out to God for deliverance. If you look back in chapter 2 and verse 23, it says, that happened in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and then the children of Israel groaned because of the bondage. And they cried out, their cry came up to God because of the bondage. So God heard their groaning. God remembered His covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God acknowledged them. So God heard their cry. They had been in bondage. They were treated unmercifully. They were whipped at times. Some of them actually were killed. And so they were crying out to God for someone to deliver them. It could be that some of us here have been in bondage to pain or to hurt for a long, long time. And maybe secretly and silently you cried out to God for deliverance. And you continually asked God to deliver you. It could be some physical pain. It might be emotional pain. It could be pain of the heart. I don't know what everyone, but I tell you what I've always believed, that on any given Sunday morning there's a broken heart on every pew. And I believe that. So God heard their cries, and as we just read in verse 23, that He looked upon them with favor, and He heard their cry. Now let's turn to the 3rd chapter, and before we read verses 7 and 8, let me set the stage here. Moses had fled from the land of Egypt because he had killed one of the Egyptians, and he, I suppose, feared for his life. And now in our setting, he is in Midian, and he is tending the flocks of his father-in-law, whose name was Jethro. And it was while he was tending the flocks of Jethro that God appeared to Moses. He appeared to Moses in a bush that burned, and yet the bush was not consumed. And God identified Himself. He said, I am the God of Abraham, I'm the God of Isaac, I'm the God of Jacob. And He said, I've got a task for you. But first of all, He told Moses, I want you to take off your shoes. And they were not shoes like we wear, they are like sandals. Take them off your feet because you're standing on holy ground. Holy ground. Can you imagine seeing a bush that's burning and yet it's not burning up? I remember years ago in our front yard when we lived in the Mobile area that we had 2 bushes out by the end of the driveway, right out of the street, and they were evergreen bushes, and they got some kind of a bug or something on them, and it killed them. And I got the brilliant idea that I'd set them on fire. And when I did, I thought about Moses and the burning bush. Opposite the way that this bush was in Exodus 3, these burned up. They burned up. But then God identified Himself, and He commissioned Moses to go back. And here's what He told Moses, and the reason He wanted him to go back to Egypt, He said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and I've heard their cry because of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows. So I've come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from that land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now, I think the message that God has in just those two little verses is a message for us today. And I think it explains the answer to the question, where is God when I hurt? Where is God when I hurt? First of all, God sees our suffering. He sees what we're going through. He knows. He said, I know, this is what he said about those people, I know their what? I know their sorrows. God is always aware of what's going on. At every moment, every hour, every day, every year, God's aware of what's going on. Proverbs 15:3 says, the eyes of the Lord are in where? Every place, beholding the evil and the good. I'm thankful to know that He's beholding the good as well. So He's everywhere. The first 14 verses of the 139th Psalm explain that in a very vivid way. I'd encourage you to write down that reference and read it to see how God knows what's going on. Even in the darkness, He knows what's going on. And David said, if I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, you're there. And so there's no place that you would ever be able to go that you would escape where the presence of God. God knows what's going on. You see, God sees you. And we don't think about that, but God sees you when you're in your greatest time of need in your life. And all of us have been there. All of us, some of us may be there right now. He sees you. Have you ever felt like you had your back up against the wall? You had nowhere to go, nowhere to turn? He sees you. He sees you when you're in that way. He sees you when you feel like you have no place to go. No place to go. He sees you when you've had other people that you have known turn away from you. Have you ever had that to happen? We all have. Turn away from you. I'll tell you when I have learned that people turn away from you, and it's not because they want to hurt you, it's because they don't know what to do. It's when you have had something catastrophic to happen in your life. A death, a divorce, or maybe you've lost your job, all kinds of things. People don't know what to say, so rather than trying to say something that they might not say the right thing, they just leave you alone. God sees you when the world beats you down. Have you ever felt beaten down by the world? I think all of us at times we think like that. And when you're ready to give up, never ever give up. That's a speech that Winston Churchill made at a preparatory school for boys, and that was his speech. How would you like to hear sermons this long? Never, never, never give up. And he sat down. What a speech and what a message for the world. You see, God sees the birds. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6 that who feeds the birds? God feeds the birds. Now, if God knows when the birds are hungry, and if God takes care of the birds, why wouldn't we think that He sees us when we need Him? So here's one of the lessons we learned here, that God sees our suffering. He knows your suffering, my suffering, someone else's suffering. He knows. We may think nobody knows. There's a song, I've not heard it in years. Nobody knows the trouble I see. Nobody knows but whom? Jesus. Nobody knows but Jesus. And so nobody else may know, but God does.
We hope you've been encouraged by this broadcast today and you'll share it with others. Also, if you want to hear more lessons from Billy Lambert, check out the Getting to Know Your Bible podcasts. More information is available on our website at www.gettingtoknowyourbible.com. Check us out also at www.summerdalechurch.org to be able to learn more about the congregation here in the Summerdale, Alabama area. And also, you're welcome to sign up for the free Bible correspondence course that's available at the Getting to Know Your Bible website. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time on Spiritual Uplift.